Okay, it's happening. Broadcast, setting it up. I have to go over here to my page and I click posts. It's redirecting the page. Appears that we might be live. It's exciting, guys. It's doubly exciting for me because we're live and I can hear the recycling truck down at the end of my lane picking up my recycling. So that's like I don't know, that just feels like a double whammy. Just when you didn't think things could get better. Get this on camera. There it is. It's happening. Just when you didn't think your day could be any better. You go live on Facebook, it works, technology gets out of your way, and then like, boom, your recycling gets picked up. Now, my camera looks terrible, and I don't know if that's the case for you guys watching, but if you can let us know if, oh, it just got better. That's weird. I guess it needed the T in the frame to pick that up. Well, let's start with a sip, because that's what we do. This is Harney and Sons Paris flavored tea. I don't know what it is. It tastes like it's got a lot of bergamot, which I like very much. Pour a little more in here, get it nice and toasty. Okay, so here we are. What are we at? Probably week 5 of our lockdown, our new life since the COVID overlord took over existence. What's been present for me this week? Well, a couple things. One, the magnolia and the cherry blossoms. Victoria is known as the City of Gardens. And one of my favorite parts about spring here is that we have these beautiful trees that put out incredible flowers. Magnolia flowers are my favorite because they burst into these gorgeous pink and yellow flowers, and they're there for like 2 weeks. And then they all fall off and you get a leafy tree. And, you know, if you saw it in summer, you'd never really realize it. And it wasn't until I grew up and became a man that I noticed these things. As a kid, I just didn't have the awareness. I didn't slow down. That wasn't something that captured my attention. Maybe they didn't have them where I lived. And when Bay and I lived downtown, there was a school just across the way from us, and they had a nice, gorgeous magnolia tree. And I always remember spring's often, for most of my life, been one of my favorite seasons. And I remember seeing that tree erupt into flowers and just loving it. So that's been around this week for me. We've got a ton of those flowers coming out. It's been snowing pollen everywhere. When I go into my backyard with my laptop to do some work, I sit down on we have a patio table with chairs. We have other stuff out there too. It's not just patio table and chairs, but what I'm in the purpose of this story is that I'm sitting at the patio table and chairs. That's why I'm mentioning those specific parts of what's in my backyard. There's grass, there's other stuff too. So I think we're clear on that. I sit down on the chair that is a part of the patio set. There's 3 other chairs too. So there's 4 chairs total, if this is helping you get the image of how this is set up. It's a round circular table, probably I would say 4 to 5 feet in diameter. And I sit at it with my laptop open, and I notice I'm cleaning pollen off of the keyboard like roughly every 5 minutes. So it's a very pollen-y time. I'm super grateful I don't have allergies. And I feel moderately bad for people that do. It's hard for me to really empathize because I just don't struggle with that particular thing. But Bay does, and I know I have friends that do, and it seems miserable. You guys seem miserable, and so I feel I have empathy in that regard. What about other stuff that I'm present to? I'm present to a lot of conversation lately about conspiracy theories, about people fighting back against the notion of a vaccine for this particular thing. I'm present to a lot of hate in the other direction towards Trump and his policies. I'm present to a lot of people being justified in their stance. Kind of like when we get our heels dug in and we entrench ourselves, like, I am right about this. And I know a lot about being right about my stance. I notice for the most part that I'm unfollowing a lot of those conversations. And the main reason is because they don't give me much to do. Like I think it's important to be informed. And I don't think the news is necessarily the best way to do that. And I think that the news is something best checked sparingly, especially these days. But I noticed that all of that angst, all of that frustration, all of that conversation about conspiracy theories and whatnot, it just seems to have people spiral, like circling around a drain in their bathtub. And it doesn't seem to light people up. It doesn't seem to really inspire them to do much other than complain more about the conspiracy theory. It's quite possible that's not what's happening. It's quite possible that there's a bunch of people that are really having like a life-changing experience through that. But that's not what I'm noticing. And it's definitely not what I notice in myself. When I am presented with that stuff, what I find is I tend to feel really tired and I feel sad. And when I take my attention off of pointing out the vast conspiracy or, whatever it is for you, when I take my attention off that and put it just on who can I serve? What could I do? Who could I share love with today? And when I take action in alignment with those things, I tend to feel better. I tend to feel lifted up. I tend to feel more inspired. And then I do things that are the expression of me being more lifted up, more inspired, such as create transformation, take on my own life, love people around me more, et cetera, et cetera. So that's been really up. Let's have a sip here. Another thing I notice is a lot of conversation. Well, just a lot of conversation around money seems to be live for me and for a lot of people I'm with and spending time with, which makes sense, right? The economy is just smashed into a brick wall. We've never, I think this is unprecedented. We have no precedent for what's happened in the economy, especially because it was just booming right before this, right? It was going so well and so fast, and we've just slammed the brakes on it and really just hit into a cliff face. And from that, a lot of the conversation that I see is people are, the collective conversation is kind of like, this is not the right time to invest. This is a bad time to invest. This is the time when we need to circle the wagons. We need to really be prudent, save a lot, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to preface all of what I'm going to say next by saying I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that that is the collective belief that is in the space. That is our context. That's the conversation that is there even when we're not having it, from which most of our conversations arise. So what's interesting, I notice I'm supporting a lot of people that are trying to create something in the world and they keep running into this. So they've got like a client or someone that's a prospect or whatever that's like interested in what the person I'm working with is doing. And they're like, I really love this. The only trouble is things are crazy. Now's not the time, da, 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 da. Makes sense. And my people that I'm supporting are kind of meeting them inside that same box. So when you're inside that same box with someone, you're like, yeah, it isn't the time. I really get it. It's not the time to invest. That makes sense. Maybe another time. Maybe we can follow up in a little bit. Maybe we could talk in a few weeks. Maybe I can check in with you when this is all over, right? That's the best thing you can do inside of the box of that particular conversation that we're all collectively in. And, the alternative, I suppose, would be kind of to be that skeezy car salesman, that archetype where it's like, oh, I'm going to convince them that they should invest. But it's tough because you're in that same box. So you're holding internally the belief that now is probably not the right time to invest. And then you're trying to convince someone to invest over top of that belief. So this is why so many coaches, now I'm going to take this and use as a metaphor for something far greater that exists far outside of the circumstances of COVID. This is why so many service professionals, so many people in general, really struggle with selling their services because they're operating inside this collective conversation. And so you can either agree with people and walk away, and maybe hopefully in 6 months or a year or 2 years, our circumstances will have changed to the point where you can enroll people in what you're selling. Or you can kind of like find some way to do a button run. I'm trying to use football terms, loser, trying to do an end run around your feeling bad about convincing people to do something you don't really believe in, and sort of deal with the moral quandary that puts into you. Like maybe you buy a bunch of cars so you don't have to feel that icky, gross feeling. And where you end up is you end up with a lot of coaches that are like, man, I hate selling. Hey, Maria Morales. I want to do your full name, Maria Elena Morales. Did I get that kind of good? I'm trying to do good. Morning, Chrissy. And so we're in this box, this collective box, where we have this shared set of beliefs about money, how it goes, about what is appropriate in this situation. And we're kind of left in this situation where we're like, either I just kind of give in, give up, move away, accept things as they are, or I come over top and I feel gross, but at least I make money. And this is the point where a lot of people in the coaching profession, and possibly other ones, just less aware of other professions, go, I love coaching, but I hate all of that prospecting. It feels gross. I don't want to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And then those coaches kind of try to strategize around that. They hire people to generate warm leads. They try to do advertising, and it doesn't work. It all falls apart. And here's the reason why. It's a little bit like two fish coming to meet each other in a pond, and then this fish trying to convince this fish to get out of water. And you can't pull the other fish out of water when you're still in water. And so what's happening is if we want to create things going differently, it's possible. It's hard right now because we're all stuck in this box, this context of it's a bad time to invest. Now is not the time to make big moves. And from inside that belief, from living from that belief, you're right, it isn't. There's a million alternative beliefs you could have. There's a different belief I'm operating from in my life. And that belief is that this is the best time to invest. There's never been a better time to invest. And here are some of the reasons why. Well, actually, no, I'll give you the reasons first. One, the people that are investing, especially in something like coaching right now, but also in any kind of business, they're setting themselves up to really get supported and to generate something new in the face of circumstances rather than after circumstances have passed. And what that means is that next time circumstances show up, they're already set up for it. And here's the thing. Life is cyclical, and it's going to give us, after COVID, it'll give us a new thing. Before COVID, it gave us the 2008 collapse. Before the 2008 collapse, it gave us the dot-com collapse. Before that, in 1990, I can't even remember, I was 11 years old, but it gave us something. There was something there. Maybe the collapse of the 80s or whatever. So there will always be did you see that? I'm flipping us back. I'm time traveling back to here. There's always going to be a circumstance, and the people that are getting supported and taking on their work right now in the face of this circumstance are going to be so much further ahead and able to deal with whatever comes next than the people that are basically delaying it right now. Not delaying it because they're dumb or wrong or whatever, but delaying it because they're inside that existing context, that collective conversation. It's also, those are the people that are going to come out of this running, sprinting out of this particular thing. The people that are working with coaches that are getting really supported through this time are the people really almost with an unfair advantage. Now, to really buy into that belief, I have to be doing that myself. And that drives up a lot of fear. So it's not that this other context that I'm suggesting, that I'm offering, that I'm speaking to, doesn't come with a whole bunch of fear. It does, because it comes with a whole bunch of possibility too. And so I have to make those investments. I have to look hey, where am I currently coming from that old belief? And where might I really be benefited by stepping into something deeper, something newer? What a lot of coaches do is they try to talk about this new belief and convince themselves and other people of it, but they aren't willing to actually step into it and take actions from it. And so that's a little bit like those two fish and this one that wants to help this one get out of the water, talking about all the gifts of being outside of water, but never actually taking the step themselves because it's friggin' scary. So that conversation I could probably elaborate on for another hour, and I may do so in a live at some other point, but we've got more exciting things to do together, guys. We've got Danielle Rondeau, who, you know what, Danielle, get on this camera. Get your audio on. Let's get you on here first before I speak to who you are. Pour some more tea. There you are. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, Adam.
Hello. How was that?
That was great. Yeah.
Is it fun being in the green room?
Yeah, it's awesome. I feel like I was really behind stage there.
That's cool. So let's see. Here's how I know you, and you may want to share some of your own journey with me or whatever as we go forward. But my memory is, I think I initially met you through our mutual friend, Sarah. and you and I were both lawyers. Maybe I'd moved on from that, and you were running, I think, well-being groups for lawyers. And then from there, you eventually came and took the coach training that you, Sarah, and I have all been like graduates from and like led in varying capacities.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was back in
Anything
2013.
hard to believe, hey?
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
It's hard for me even now looking back, like, oh, that was 5 years after everything collapsed. Like that even feels hard for me to get my head around. Like, oh wow, a lot of life had happened even
Uh-huh.
in that. Um, Anything you want to share about your journey that led you to here through that, like what that was like, or anything that feels there to share?
Well, there's lots, but nothing that's burning at the moment.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's dive in. Let's just jump in and see where we go. So
Sure.
what are we going to work on?
Well, actually, I love the intro because I think what I'm kind of struggling with right now is not the same content, but the same kind of struggle in that I want to be helping people in this time to make decisions from a different place
Uh-huh.
and live their life from a different place, which is self-guided or soul-guided, kind of like the deep inner truth, guided by their deep inner truth, however they call that for themselves,
Yeah.
rather than looking outward for messages or for guidance or for, this is how you should do it or what you're supposed to do, or this is the path to success. So the piece that kind of ties into what you were talking about is I do this sometimes, but I don't do it all the time for
Right.
myself. And so I end up feeling like a hypocrite, or like I can't be offering this, or I'm not ready yet, because I'm struggling to stand in that place myself a lot of the time, at least fully and consistently. And I know the benefits, so I can speak to the benefits because I have experienced them, and I also intellectualize them and know them like philosophically really well.
Right.
But I often don't feel that kind of integrity of being that person
Mm.
who is living from that place all the time. And so that I can speak from that place when I share what I do with others.
Got it. So you're not you're not doing it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I'm not doing it perfectly. In my own mind, I'm not doing it good enough. I'm not ready, or something of that flavor.
Yeah.
So that's a belief, and not necessarily true, but there is some truth in that I'm still in the fear of embracing what I believe fully.
Mm. I can totally relate to that. I so get that. Okay. So, well, what would you want to leave with?
Well, I'd like to do it perfectly, Adam.
I have a 12-part strategy.
I guess I would like more faith and more
Mm.
trust in where I'm at, and in that way of being that I would like to embody
Mm.
and share with others.
More faith and more trust in where you're at.
And in the being, the way of being, or the philosophy of what I want to share with others. So more faith in what I really believe, and that would look like me acting in alignment with that more consistently, and sharing about it more consistently. So
Oh, got it.
I guess like trusting where I'm at so that I feel I can share from where I'm at without having it perfect. And also trusting in the philosophy or the belief that I want to bring into the world so that I'm actually living it more myself.
Oh, got it. And so what do you have right now instead of trust?
Well, I have trust sometimes, and then sometimes it looks more like well, I should be doing this because I say I believe it. So I kind of get to the point where I get sick of myself not living that way, that I take a few actions that are supportive of me connecting with my deeper truth and living from that place. So kind of from a should or a shaming myself or a, beating myself into doing the new thing because I don't want to be a hypocrite, or I can feel the consequences of me not doing it.
Got it. Okay, so let me see if I'm hearing this right. It sounds kind of like you're present to the voice, the soul, self, or the voice of the self or the soul, or whatever we describe. So you can hear its guidance to some extent, but then are scared or have some quality of your humanity show up that has it sort of, you feel a little stuck, and you hold off, which creates an increasing like experience of self-loathing, or we could even just call it existential pain or whatever, until you get to the point where you're like, I can't keep doing this. And then you take that step. And then is that kind of how it goes?
Yes. Yeah. And that cycle kind of repeats itself.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you are living the way you're wanting to support others to live. It's just that there's part of this cycle that doesn't feel good, or that you want to be different, or something along those lines. Is
yeah,
that right?
I guess I would like the gap to be shorter, like that gap where I suffer and resist to be like not as long.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, and is the idea like that if you had trust and faith, you would just forever, always, as soon as you heard the voice, you'd be like, let's do it, off we go?
I guess ideally, yes. Most of the time, or at least like I don't see it as, I guess that question makes me kind of feel like a choice between soul and humanity. So like my humanity, my survival mechanism, my ego, which I don't really hold it as. I think it's so it's not like, it's the thing I put on top of that. So the making it wrong and the resistance. So I don't think that living in alignment with my deeper truth or my soul would look like me like floating and like sharing beauty and like brilliant things with the world 100% of the time and just being love. It would be messy, and it would be have lots of different range of experiences and emotion, but it would be, that would be part of it. So I would, I guess, listen or allow that experience rather than pushing it, holding it off, not and waiting until it builds up to this kind of boiling point before I would even let myself feel the negative feeling, for example, or let myself take the next step that would have me be seen in the world. I'm not sure if I'm explaining.
No, you're making total sense.
Getting it across, but
no, it's at least over here it feels really clear. So like what I'm hearing you say is it sounds just like there's a process for you as you walk the path of soul or self or whatever. And the way that process currently looks is that you hear something and then you have resistance to it for whatever the reason happens to be. Do I have that part right?
Yeah. Or I don't let myself hear it consciously. Like I create the circumstances where I block out my deeper truth.
Right. Yeah.
By making myself busy or whatever.
Yeah. Which we could just call resistance for the sake of like keeping it super simple, right? Resistance has many forms. It might not even be a conscious resistance, but like that's there. One sec. What happened there? Okay, there we go. So there's kind of like two lines of thought that show up for me. The first one is I'm kind of, I'm like, I wonder how Danielle relates to her resistance. Because right now it sounds like that's sort of not part of a soul-led life. to some extent, or like the amount of it is not part of it, as opposed to it all being part of what it is to live a life that is soul led. So there's that path. And then the other path that presents itself to me is kind of like, well, where is this currently happening? So like, oh, we could make this real and look in your life, like where you're experiencing this resistance, and look through that lens. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing about my job is I don't have to choose. So which do you feel led to in this moment?
Well, I actually feel like there's another piece that I want to share.
Please.
So there's, I think what part of this kind of this shift is, or that I see is, the way that I would like to be living more often is not in control of it. It requires me not knowing exactly how it's going to go. So I'm very good at making a plan and a vision and all the things to get from A to B, and making B really beautiful, and then trying to get like the fastest way to get there that's just linear and clean, and that's not, I think that's not necessarily how it looks when I'm listening. So
right.
That's the piece that, and maybe this is like, how does the resistance show up? Maybe that's along the lines of where this is going, but
we'll see.
Yeah. It is me not allowing it to be okay to not know, or to not know what the outcome of me taking a certain step, or allowing that deeper truth to become manifest in my life. What is the outcome of that? I don't know. I don't necessarily know how it's going to play out, whether it's going to be successful, or whether I'm going to look like a fool. So there's that's kind of in the background of, I think, what often has me retreat, is that I don't know.
Can I make sure I've heard that? So it sounds like you might hear this, but there's like, yeah, but I can't see the 15 different, like, I need to see the path to where it leads so that I know that there is some way that this will work out. Mm-hmm. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. If I don't know, I either fill in the things I don't know with whatever I can come up with that makes sense, and then try to make that happen, or I don't listen. Like I'll shut it down and then just do what I know.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes total sense. So let's see if we've got this all on the table. It's like, one, you're doing whatever you're doing, and then life's like, or your soul or yourself is like, I got something for you. And you either, it sounds like fairly reliably, you can hear that, but you're like, then where you go to is like, yeah, but show me the schematic so I know where this is going to end up. And then from not seeing that, you kind of get into this a little bit. The way the cycle goes is like, get really busy, double down on what you're already doing, et cetera, whatever there is, feel more and more like, building up. And then eventually like, fuck it, I have to do it. And then take that step and then do life and then repeat. Is that about it?
Yeah, that sounds that sounds familiar.
Okay, great. Anything else in this sort of cycle overall that we're missing that should be in there, that we should distinguish?
I don't think so.
Cool. Okay. So how would you like this to go?
Well, I guess I would like to be better at not knowing, or be more okay with not knowing.
Did you say be more okay with not knowing? That's adorable. I love it.
Yeah, be more okay with not knowing. Or I would like to know that it's going to be okay. Like I would like
Uh-huh.
to know how it's going to go.
Yes.
Or at least know that I'm not going to create something terrible. Like
Mm.
at least know that it's not that like it's not going to go all the way to the dark. That there's going to be like, sure, there's a little bit of rejection or a little bit of like, you know, challenge or struggle or things that are along any path, but I don't want to take a path that's going to like crush me
Right.
emotionally or have me want to give up completely.
Right. So it's kind of like the fear is that you listen to this voice and then it leads you to ruin, whatever ruin looks like, financial ruin, emotional ruin,
Yeah.
spiritual ruin, whatever it is. You're like, fuck, I listened, I'm here, and now I cannot recover. Is that kind of the flavor of it?
Yeah. And that is a flavor. It's kind of like I don't know if I can I don't know if my, I guess, humanity can handle the challenges that will be on this path that
Mm.
like emotionally, mostly emotionally. So can I emotionally handle the amount of rejection or the amount of failure or the amount of it not going okay? Can my ego
Uh-huh.
handle that? Can my humanity, can my more human side of me handle that and process that in a healthy way? Um, that's where I don't trust fully. I trust that I guess I trust to a certain extent that my soul or my deeper truth or that part of me that is divinely connected and led is not out to hurt me. Like there's no, I don't feel like it's
Not
malicious.
malice. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's actually in service of life, which includes my life and like life in general on this planet. And I trust that, but I guess I don't trust that I'm strong enough to handle the challenges that might come along the way, and I might decide to quit or to like I might collapse. I might have some kind of, I might not be able to handle the level of heartbreak that comes with that.
Yes. I so get it. And I'm going to speak to everyone else for a moment, which is like, check in with yourself and see if you can find this really vulnerable, beautiful truth that Danielle's sharing with us, which is like we all feel called into something in our lives, and then there's this fear. But yeah, but what? Like, what if? Can we really trust whatever it is? That's a really Danielle. I really get that. Like, I can relate to that in a lot of ways. Like, oh my god, I'm being called to this, and then, but what? Like, can I really say yes to that? What'll happen? So I didn't totally, I really get that. Like the fear is, well, it's not malicious. And yet, am I strong enough to walk through that fire? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah.
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 Um, so where do you, on the one hand, I'm like, okay, it sounds like it's like not really trusting yourself to go through this. On the other hand, maybe there's like a relationship to spirit that maybe like, well, can I really trust? It sounds like you're pretty strong there. You're like, I trust the path laid out in front of me. It's more me that I don't totally trust. Is that
Yeah.
how it occurs for you?
Yeah. And then because of that, I beat myself up for not following this path, which I know is actually in service of
Hmm.
me and the world in general, like me being making the contribution I came here to make. Um, so it's really a belief that I just can't hack it. I'm not strong enough. I'm not emotionally strong enough to handle being a leader in that way, like
Hmm.
really standing in who and what I believe and um, everything that comes with that.
Yeah. And so resist, resist, resist. It sounds like eventually the pain, because there's a pain to resisting this, and eventually it becomes too much, and then you take that step.
Yeah.
Got it. So if we got you more better at being more okay with all of this, what would we, and I don't know how we would do that, but let's just entertain it. So what would we notice in that situation? How would things be different?
I guess I would trust that I would be okay, and that the cost of me consistently taking action is not so high that I can do it sustainably. So I would be taking steps every day instead of once every week or two. To share who I am and what I believe, and to be seen and to be a leader for what I believe. So I would be consistently being that in the world, in a more visible, bigger way.
Got it.
And I guess paired with that would be on the other side, the kind of self-care, the level of self-care that would be required for that would be in place. So, whatever it would take for me to be okay with whatever was coming back. Right. The criticism or the rejection or even the acceptance and the growth of, the both sides of it, the positive and the negative. So I would have in place those practices to kind of keep my ego in check from letting it get inflated, and to being like a top dog, bottom dog, and also to not let it just take me out completely and get depressed about being rejected or whatever happens.
Right. Got it. Do you have something that we can look at to make this real?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
So like right now it's pretty conceptual, right? Like this idea, just generally speaking, a feeling you have in your life where you feel called towards something, have resistance, have fear about it, wish you could just not have that, can't, get busy, try to ignore it, voice becomes louder and louder. Eventually you have to take that step, blah, 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 which is so understandable. Like this, you could almost argue that this is what every human being is up against. This is the human condition where we're like, we feel called to something and we try our very best to not hear it. And like you and I come from the legal background where those of us drawn in that direction, we're like better than most of the world at not listening to that inner voice. Mm-hmm. And like, it allows you to do your job in some ways, but it also like it's cancerous, mm-hmm. right? It like eats away at you inside. Mm-hmm. It's ulcerous or cancerous. So I'm really I get how this all sort of plays out at a conceptual level. I'm wondering if you have like a place in your life for us to look where it's like, okay, well, here's a place where I feel called towards something, and I'm up against this.
Yeah. I guess the place that's most present for me right now is in basically sharing this philosophy or this kind of this knowing that I have that if we were to embrace living from this way, we would create a totally different world if we could learn to cultivate the trust to be self-directed from this deeper truth. If each of us could cultivate this practice and I guess, be living in integrity with ourselves, we would be, by extrapolating, we would be in integrity with life. Like the things we are called to would be in service of life, would be supportive of the world, living in harmony, being more beautiful, being restored, and kind of healthy in ways that it is not right now. And
So,
so sharing this, like it is actually that, like the thing that I'm struggling with is the thing that I know that I'm here to bring to the world.
and how are you, like, because what I heard you say is, well, if I was better at being more better at knowing it will be okay one way or the other, you'd be taking more steps on a regular basis. So like, what are the steps you're currently resisting?
I guess like talking about it, sharing writing, sharing videos, finishing the book I'm writing, supporting people to learn how to reconnect with this part of themselves and to begin to trust it. Supporting people to get out of the busyness and the numbing out, whether it's lawyers or others. But so basically creating things in alignment with this. And I don't have like not any specific little thing, but generally creating things in that realm.
And how are you resisting this? What does your resistance currently look like?
Confusion. Like I don't know what the next step is. I don't know what I don't know what to create. I don't know what feels the most true, what to create next. Where do I spend, like, not letting myself choose.
Which then keeps you, what do you focus on when you're like, once you're confused, where does your attention go?
To things that I know, like that I can do, that feel, I guess, safe or supportive in some way. So I'll go and have a productive day doing some legal work and, you know, be like, well, you know, at least I'm saving some money and I did something that feels good. And
Right. So you'll do the stuff you can do.
Yeah.
But it's not really the fullest expression of what you're called towards.
Yeah. Or I'll write a blog post, or I'll, you know, go for a run, or I'll do something that it's somewhat supportive of me and my personal health. It's just not that kind of kernel of like where everything intersects, like the reason why I'm here. It doesn't touch that.
Got it. So over here, it seems like you've got a thing you feel called towards, which you sound pretty clear on. You've got some fear in the way of that, which is like, but how do I know I'm going to do it right? Or how do I know this is the right thing? Or what if this sucks? Or, you know, what if it was meant to look this way? Or, you know, trying to figure it out, trying to get the schematic you described. And it sounds like you can distinguish all of that. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think there is for us to do with that?
I don't know. It often just really feels like a choice, and whether I'm willing to make it, like in the moment, like every moment. And sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm not. And so I don't actually know what to do with that.
Well, so what about in this moment? Like if you were to take something on in this moment that moved this forward, well, let's take a step back. So I'm a believer, and I think you are too, that fear and possibility always show up together, and they show up in equal and opposite countermeasures. It's like blowing up a balloon. You can't blow up half of a balloon. You blow up the whole balloon, and fear and possibility come together. And so you can't blow up half a balloon. I'm going to remember that. That sounded good. I don't know what I'll do with it. I just liked it. So it sounds like you're kind of up against the problem of like, oh yeah, there's something I'm really clear on, and there's some fear with it. And right now you're letting the fear stop you.
Yes.
Do we actually need to distinguish anything about that fear? Like, is that where we need to put our attention, or is that just going to keep us looking at the fear rather than stepping into what there is for you to step into?
Yeah, that's probably true. It's probably like I'm really good at distinguishing and being aware. Like
Yes.
I have a lot of capacity for self-awareness.
Right. Yeah, it's a detriment to some of us, right? Where we're like, oh, let's look at that some more, and I'll see it this way and that way. Let me read you a passage from one of my favorite books. It's called Illusions. You may
Oh
have heard
yeah,
me read this before.
I'm not
Let me
sure.
read it again. Okay. Uh, Once there lived a village of creatures along the bottom of a great crystal river. The current of the river swept silently over them all, young and old, rich and poor, good and evil, the current going its own way, knowing only its own crystal self. Each creature, in its own manner, clung tightly to the twigs and rocks of the river bottom, for clinging was their way of life, and resisting the current, what each had learned from birth. But one creature said at last, I am tired of clinging. Though I cannot see it with my eyes, I trust that the current knows where it is going. I shall let go, and let it take me where it will. For clinging, I shall die of boredom. And the other creatures laughed and said, Fool, let go, and that current you worship will throw you, tumbled and smashed across the rocks, and you will die much quicker than boredom. But the one heeded them not, and taking a breath, did let go, and at once was tumbled and smashed by the current across the rocks. Yet, in time, as the creature refused to cling again, the current lifted him free from the bottom, and he was bruised and hurt no more. And the creatures downstream, to whom he was a stranger, cried, See, a miracle! A creature like ourselves, and yet he flies. See the Messiah, come to save us all. And the one carried in the current said, I am no more Messiah than you. This river delights to lift us free, if only we dare let go. Our true work is in this voyage, this adventure. But they cried all the more, Savior! All the while clinging to the rocks. And when they looked again, he was gone, and they were left alone making legends of a savior. What do you hear in that?
I I mean, it resonates a lot. I'm smiling because I think Bay read that passage to me about 5 times in our coaching together throughout the years. And it's beautiful, and it's often very exactly where I'm at. But that is, yeah, the choice, I guess, that I was pointing to do I choose to let go, and then the continuous choice to not like cling on again, you know.
So, where do you find yourself in this moment?
Well, right now I feel like I've let go.
Okay.
Like this in this moment, I feel even doing this call was something that I was nervous about, just being seen in a Facebook live, being coached about my shit. So I feel that I've made a choice today that feels really good to me, that feels aligned, that feels
What would be the next thing to do from here? So let's really honor that you've made this choice. You've said like, fuck it, I'm stepping in. I'm not going to keep hating myself or thinking about it or trying to figure out the confusion. That's how confusion works, right? If our fear gets us confused, then what we try to do is solve the confusion, and then that can just happen forever.
Yeah.
So great, you've made a choice to show up, and then I heard you say like, and you want to keep taking steps. That's where you would be if we resolve this, is you would continue to take steps rather than take a step and then a week later take another step.
Yeah.
So what would be the next step from this place?
So that's where the confusion takes over. I don't know.
You have no idea what there's to do next?
I know some things that I could do.
What are they?
There's some writing homework I need to do for my book. Creating some kind of regular video about just me sharing what I'm up to and what I'm about.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of regular, like, social media visibility.
Do you do that irregularly right now?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
I regularly post a blog post once a week, but
Great.
I post a video maybe once every 3 months or something like that.
Okay, great. Okay.
So that's something that feels like there is to do.
So I noticed as you shared like the writing homework, it didn't feel very edgy over here. I can be totally wrong about that, but I could see that being really safe. And it sounds kind of like the edge for you, Danielle, is to lean out and put yourself at risk, really, of being tumbled and smashed across those rocks.
Mm-hmm.
To lean out and like be at risk of receiving the feedback that you might get.
Yeah.
So what is there for you to share in a video or whatever format it is currently?
I mean, I guess there's lots of different things I could share, but all along the lines of kind of what we've been talking about. So the, benefits of reconnecting with your inner truth and the how to do that and what that looks like and what that looks like for me. So some sharing about, my own journey with that.
What's the part you don't want to share with people about your inner journey?
Yeah, well, it's actually kind of this, that I still struggle with this. So that's, and I guess, so the thing with that is, like, I don't want to share and appear like I need to be saved. Like, I don't want to share my vulnerability with the energy of, like, people come and save me, help me, I need help, because I don't actually, but that's often, I don't know where it ends up. And that's what I think that's what I'm most afraid of is, if I share what I don't have yet figured out, or, where my edge is with this, then people won't trust me because I don't have it figured out, and they'll need to come and save me instead of me helping them with what I can offer.
I would like to make some assertions. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
The first thing I want to do is actually just connect, like relate to that, because I really get that. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, what's here for me to share is what I'm afraid of and what feels crappy right now. And then these people post comments like, maybe you should just not worry so much, Adam. And I'm like, wow, yeah, you got me. Stop doing that. How dare you? So yeah, I really get it, right? Like if we put ourselves out there, if we're authentic and vulnerable, that's going to have an impact. And some of the response to that impact will be caretaking.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. You don't have to feel that way. Anytime ever that you express sadness, I guarantee you that there's going to be people that try to fix you from being sad. You see this a ton in new coaches that are kind of shallow in their work. Is you'll talk to them and they'll be like, how's it going? And you share something in your life, like, yeah, not bad, some ups and downs. It's been really tough. And they're immediately trying to reframe it for you so it's a positive thing. And it's like, actually, if you could slow down, it's okay for me to not have a positive experience. It's okay for me to be sad. That's part of life as much as being happy is. Mm-hmm. So my assertions are that I heard you say, I'm worried I'll share that. They'll respond that way and they won't trust me. That is the case because you don't currently trust you.
Yeah, I guess I don't trust that won't take me out and that I won't believe their story, that I need help.
Yeah. So you will be tumbled and smashed across the rocks. And that's how you will find trust in yourself, is not by making sure you never are tumbled and smashed across the rocks, but by discovering your own, I don't really love the term resilience, but like your capacity to be not only free and flowing, but smashed across the rocks and to heal and to recover and to become even more profoundly powerful from that place.
Mm-hmm.
So my assertion is the very thing you're afraid to share is the thing that you must share. And can you see that your people might be struggling with the same thing? They're like, man, I really want to work with this. Like, I feel called to something and I'm terrified about it. And if I could just overcome my terror and never feel that way, then I could live a life that I'm called into.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
That resonates. I like.
What's going on?
I'm just thinking, I guess I'm thinking about like, I used to share like this. Like I used to share vulnerably a lot.
Yeah.
When I first started. And that's often what happened is I would get responses like, oh, it's okay. Like, let me take care of you. And then I would think I needed taken care of and it would take me out.
Yes.
So I guess I'm just remembering that. And it did also create healing for me in that I now have the capacity to share about a whole bunch of things that I didn't like at the beginning of my journey or, 10 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. I read your book. Like you shared some really vulnerable stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
So my experience of like our breakthroughs or our edges or our shadows is not that people are like, you'll never feel this way again. Nonsense, my friend. That's not my experience. My experience is it's like we're lapping them on a track.
Mm-hmm.
So we're further ahead, or you could think of it like a spiral outwards. We move through stuff, we're further ahead, but then we come back to it because we're like, oh crap, now I'm playing a much bigger game in my life. And now that fear looks like this. The flavor, the content, the pieces on the board are a little bit different, but oh crap, it's that new fear. It's still there.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I see is anytime we practice something new. So this is like what I would invite you to hold this like is like it's a real practice in trusting yourself exactly as you are. It sounds like the way you've kind of got this is like trusting yourself if you could just get past this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so right now, like this practice of putting this out there, of sharing this, that's going to be edgy because it's in the face of your old story, your old context about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to practice creating a new belief. And while you're doing that and it hasn't fully been integrated, it's going to trigger other people. And while you haven't fully created the breakthrough yourself, them getting triggered is going to trigger you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, it probably will drive that thing up. It's going to like, you're actually going to battle against that part of you that doesn't trust yourself. You're taking that belief on. And the only way to really go to battle, so to speak, with that, we could come up with a more loving term, but whatever, we'll stick with this warrior metaphor. The only way to really take that on is to face it, to confront it, to merge with it.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So how are you going to practice, Danielle? What are you going to take on this week? Or even today, right after this ends?
I'll have another call right after this ends.
Great, you'll cancel that.
Till 1, yeah. Tell Cami, if you're listening, I'm not on the call. I think it's in video sharing. That's what always comes up for me that I most want to resist. Is a regular practice of doing videos. And yeah, So what will I take on? I will do a video this weekend and one next week.
How does that feel?
Like, okay, that's scary. I don't really want to. I mean, okay, I should be more specific. So, because I could do videos that are not scary.
Mm-hmm.
I could easily do that.
Yeah.
So I will do one video in the next week that is on the edge of this kind of piece of me sharing where I struggle with this trusting myself or trusting my inner truth and what that looks like and how I work through it for myself.
Great. I would really invite you to like ultimately so it's kind of funny. It's always ironic. Like what builds the most trust in ourselves is sharing what we don't trust about ourselves. Because in doing so, we discover, oh, it's okay. It's the same thing with imposter syndrome, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, I got to figure out all of the stuff because then I won't feel like an imposter. The way to solve imposter syndrome is to just own what's there. Guys, I don't really know what I'm doing up here at the front of the room. A little bit scared, kind of wacky about it. Don't worry, I got this, but that's there for me. And then you're like, oh, that's interesting. It seemed to go away when I shared that.
Yeah.
Or it's still there a little, but I can be with it more now. I can be okay with it being there a little.
Mm-hmm.
How would we know what's the feeling you would have in your body or in your spirit if you were sharing on that edge?
It would be kind of a nervous energy and this feeling of like, I don't want to like this, like I've got to overcome that resistance just to push send and like start.
Are we talking pre-recorded or live?
Like probably live.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would also look like me needing to do things to support myself, like to support like this morning I was nervous, so I went for a run because I knew that I needed to support myself in order to do something that was going to scare me.
Great.
To be seen. So that's one of the things that would, I guess, that would be like my healthy response to it.
Yes.
To prepare for it, to prepare my kind of being, my level of self-confidence and self-worth and trust in myself to the level that I need to show up that way.
Got it. Yeah, great. So that's our compass. We want, like, if you're practicing, we want that, I don't want to hit this. That's the place to be. If it's like, yeah, I can do this, or like I'm imagining, and this is not to disparage the legal work, but I can imagine that you don't have like, I don't really, you might be bored by it and have that flavor of it, but I imagine you're not like, oh my God, this is really edgy and my armpits are sweaty and stuff. That probably isn't showing up for you. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So that's the other place I'm going to invite you to practice is to like get sweaty armpits this week. Do whatever you need to do to manage them, but get sweaty armpits so that we know that you're playing out on the edge. You said one video this weekend, one video next weekend?
The next, like during the week.
I notice I really want you to do one on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or at least 3 videos. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that feels like the first thought that came into my mind that I then was like, no, it can't do that.
Great. Yes. Would you be up to do that?
Yeah, I will do that. I'll do 3.
Awesome. Would you be willing to tag me in them?
Sure.
Cool. I love that. How does that feel?
It feels like a scary level of accountability.
Cool.
Yeah.
Little sweaty?
A little, yeah.
Good. Excellent. We're going for armpit sweat, but not incontinence. That's the gradient that we're always playing
Yeah,
with.
right.
Yeah. Sweat, but not urine.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that you see, Danielle, to take on with regards to this that might serve you and keep you moving forward?
Well, it really is tied to the level of self-care that I create for myself. So that's sort of, that's a necessity that needs to go alongside it, which looks like getting up and getting outside every morning as a way to start my day for a run or a walk to the water or something like that. Yeah. So
Great.
just like upping my self-care practice. Yeah.
And are you willing to be your commitment to do these 3 videos either way?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I love it. I hear you saying like, I really want to take on some self-care to support me as I'm letting go of the twigs and rocks along the bottom. And you won't be putting that in front of, oh, I didn't go for a run, therefore I'm letting myself off on this thing. You're going to play either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. How are we leaving you?
Yeah, it feels good and scary, and like this is where I need to be practicing. So
For real?
yeah, no,
Okay,
like
great.
this is what I need to be practicing. And I think I knew that by coming on a call with you, I would create the accountability I needed. So that's why it was scary for me. So yeah, I feel good about it. Like good at that deeper level, good, not good and like comfortable good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's a beautiful distinction, even speaking to a soul-led path, for your people. It's like, oh, it doesn't always feel good on the surface. Your soul feels good, but maybe your armpits don't. Maybe your comfort doesn't feel good. Maybe what we're calling whatever that feeling in the moment, maybe that doesn't feel good. And there's like a real gift in having that distinguished. So I love that you're picking up on that and speaking to it. I want to acknowledge you, Danielle, and then just kind of debrief together. That sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Before we do anything else to have this conversation feel complete.
No, I don't think so.
Cool. I'm so glad, like the idea of you being on video really fills my heart. In part just because you're such a radiant woman. There's like, I'm like, I want more. Give me more of this woman. You're like super compelling to look at. You're energetically, I can feel like you're made for that. That is who you are. And I also get that scary because it's a lot of feedback. If we're going to stand up and take the stage, we're going to get the applause and we're also going to get the boos. That takes a lot of courage. And so I really acknowledge you for, one, being willing to feel the heartbreak that comes with desire. Like, oh my God, there's this voice calling me forward that I can hear, and I'm not there. I'm not saying yes to that in this moment, and feeling that, it's much easier for people to shut that down entirely. I won't even hear that voice. Then I don't have to feel heartbroken. Why am I bored? I don't know. Let's have another drink. Mm-hmm. And you're playing a different game from that already. So thanks for the courage. Thanks for thanks for being willing to be dashed across the rocks that way. And then thanks for playing at a higher level, even more so, like not stopping there, but being willing to like, yeah, I'm going to take this on. I'm going to take the next step. That is so courageous. And if it feels scary, that's the feeling of courage. There's no fear, there's no courage. So thanks for being up for taking a courageous step. Thanks for gifting the world more of your radiance and your brilliance and like your just simple wisdom and truth. It's very delicious on you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to say something first, and then I'd love to check and hear what you're present to. But like the thing I'm really present to in this conversation is the distinction I have around coaching being equal parts magic and dog shit. And the magic is like, oh my God, we can distinguish something new and see like a new awareness. And oh, the way I was looking at stuff, I've shifted it and now everything's possible. And then there's the part where we still have to go out into the street and step in dog shit. We still, that part of life still exists. We still have to go and do stuff. There is still a need for facilitative work, so to speak. Like, hey, we have to take actions, because if all we do is meditate in a cave and sit inside our own heads and create all the transformation in the world, who fucking cares? The world doesn't change from that. And so, I was really present to both parts of that, both sides of that in this conversation. And I like the name of that distinction. Always tickles me when I get to speak to it. What, if anything, were you present to, Danielle?
I guess it is along those lines as well. It's the paradox of the being in the discomfort of being in integrity with yourself, and what that really feels like is different than what it thinks like. So like understanding what it is to be in integrity with yourself is different than actually being in integrity with yourself. And that's, I think, what we're bringing me into in this conversation is the integrity of being that I was resisting, but it doesn't like it. Yeah. So yeah. I think that's what I'm most present to, is like what it actually feels like in my body to be in integrity with myself.
I love that. And the other thing I'm present to is probably about halfway through, I was like, oh, this might be one of those conversations where we just actually have Danielle go do something right in the middle of it. And I was like, that was starting to feel there. I was like, oh yeah, there's some facilitative work to do here. We could just talk about this forever and it's not going to actually create the shift Danielle's craving in her life. And then I got really scared because I was like, how do I do that with this live format? Like, could I have her open another laptop and then go do a video right then? That'd be super weird. So I had that, like the logistical fear show up. And then I also felt like my experience was a desire for you to stay a little bit up in the stands, like in the conversation about it conceptually and distinguishing it rather than to come down. And if that wasn't there for you, it certainly was there for me. I was like, ooh, it's scary for me to direct us a little bit more into something to actually be done. It would feel much easier to hang out, better on the surface for me to hang out up there than to like what my soul was craving was like, no, let's get this actually moving forward.
Yeah. I felt that. And I actually felt that shift when the conversation shifted, and it didn't shift in like you saying, go do a thing, but it shifted in that the conversation moved into the, okay, well, like, what are you taking on? And the energy, I felt your energy holding that space for me. And that created in my being, I felt like,
yeah.
Okay, this is the real shit now. Because we could talk about it forever, and
yes,
it'd be super interesting, but also nothing would change, and I wouldn't actually get what I needed.
There's something I've noticed it throughout this conversation, and I have a hunch about it, which is sometimes when you're speaking, especially when it's like you're trying to figure it out, your speaking can be quite halting. So you like share and then say some more, and then it's a next. The experience I have is almost like, it very much fits with what you're describing, which is there is a version of Danielle that is just like spirit operating as her. And from that place, I imagine you're speaking, and I've noticed it, like even just now when you were speaking, there was like just flowing out. You weren't sort of checking each thing, scanning it. Yep, that one goes through, that one goes through, that one goes through. And so I suspect at first it'll probably be the opposite, but I suspect as you become willing to share the parts of yourself that are a little bit scary and find trust in yourself in sharing that, your speaking is actually going to shift, and it'll start to become like as radiant and as flowing as you are as a being.
Yeah, I can feel that. I think the halting happens also when I'm speaking. Like right now, I'm doing. I can feel it, and it happens sometimes when I'm intentionally trying to drop the mask and be more authentic, because I catch myself just saying things that I think will work in the situation, and then I stop myself and let what else wants to come out.
Yes.
So it does give this like kind of jolting, like, what is she doing? But that's often what's happening internally for me, at least like on like a semi-conscious level. I'm training myself to not use that old automatic way of being in conversation, where I often would leave a conversation at the end and not even know what it was about. Like it would have been this super engaging, like, networking type conversation.
Yeah.
But like I walk away and I don't even know the person's name or what they do. And like, what did I even say? I don't know. I probably just agreed and said something that was like perfect in the moment. But so that's the shift that is happening, I think. That you're speaking to.
Yeah, I love it. So that's just something that I think is waiting for you. That's some gold that's going to shift, is just like this experience of, oh, wow, I can just talk and whatever comes out, comes out. And the path I've found for me, because that's really relatable, right? I would be in a conversation with someone, I hated networking, and then I would completely network. It was the irony of it, play those stupid rules. And I'd ask them really great questions about them, and they wouldn't know a damn thing about me, because I was hiding ultimately, and I didn't trust them I didn't trust me. They wouldn't like me. So I had to do the thing. Mm-hmm. And what I've found is, as time has gone on, I'm more willing to share all of me. And then I don't have to like scan it as it's going. I kind of will reach a point where I'm like, oh, what am I even doing right now? Let me stop. And then I just recalibrate myself once. And that's kind of what I think will tend to happen, is you won't have to keep checking each step along the way, but like, oh, I'm doing that thing with you right now. I'm having a very good Can we stop that? Let's do a different thing.
So I still have the judgment on myself for that, I think, a bit more than what you're speaking about. Yeah.
It's going to shift. I'm so clear on that.
Yeah.
Danielle, you are amazing. Thank you so much for hanging out and being in this conversation. Cami says, fantastic work. She can't wait to see your videos. And she's got to run off. I'm just going to see if anyone else here had anything to share with us. Right. Cami was saying also those who had a disempowered relationship with selling their services before COVID, it's no different now. In fact, it's just, we've got an even bigger circumstance to attach it onto. Mm-hmm. Let me check if there's anything I want to share with people before we wind down. I feel called to do another dance video. And so if you are interested, I think I'm going to go break down the funky chicken, which is not what you think it is. It's a social dance. We'll probably create a few grooves together. So if you feel compelled, if you feel called to pick up something new during this crazy COVID time and you're bored out of your mind, you can come hang out and do that, and like it and share it with people, because it's more fun. I'm only here for the shares and the likes. And yep, I think that's all that we're going to say today. So thanks, everyone. Love you guys. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.